Welcome to Galactic Grandmother Heart to Heart. My name is April, and my special guest today is Matthew Aaron Mourian. Matthew is an author. He wrote Remember Your Mission, which I just finished. It is a profound autobiographical account of his awakening, which was pretty dramatic. And he is a full-time psychic. He's an energy worker. He has a unique ability to look inside your body and really perceive what's going on with your organs, your chakras, your meridians. And I recently had a reading and energy work done by him, and he is fantastic. I would recommend that. So, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time, Matthew.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. It's truly an honor. I don't get to do that many shows these days. And so, like whenever I do, I'm like, there's certainly a reason for it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Talking about your profound awakening, I think it's important for people to understand that it's not all this pretty meditating under a tree and wonderful metaphysical occurrences that you have in meditation, which it could be. But for the most part, it seems like a lot of people have experiences like you did that completely you go into it as a normal guy with a job and a house and a family, and you come out of it on a completely different timeline. Uh,
Mm.
did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, honestly, that's very, very true, and especially when it comes to the concept, which I know is kind of a big catch-all term depending on who you follow. But yeah, like the process of switching a timeline for me was it was life-changing, which for me that started in 2015 specifically when I what I do understand now is that I had a very, very, we could call it explosive Kundalini awakening experience that wasn't necessarily accidental. It was just a thing that happened, and nothing happens by mistake in this world. But yeah, for me, the beginning of the journey toward understanding, what I'm doing in this life, where I was being led, and honestly, who I am, maybe from a soul level. It was not a beautiful, blissful experience. It was very much, like I said in the book. I mean, it was a process of having to come to terms with the idea that no, I have not completely lost my mind. There's something real going on in my life. And to make it even more crazy, you almost have to lose your mind in the process of understanding, really what that is. By losing the mind, the old version of self really had to come to terms with all that. And yeah, it was a very, very bizarre experience. I still look back on that now, that having been from the 2015 to 2017 period. And looking back at all the insanity and just the wildness that I had experienced at that stage, now when I can look at it, I'm like, none of that was by mistake. Every step,
Oh,
every incident was
yeah.
all by design to prepare me for what we're doing now. And so, yeah, it was quite a journey.
And I do think it's important if people are awakening and they start to feel like all these strange occurrences are happening, they feel like they're losing their mind. It's important to know that there's people out there that can help you. Go online, look for energy healers, psychics. It sounds kind of woo woo, but you're going to get a lot of help from metaphysicians.
Yeah, yeah, that was really the only direction I could turn at that time because it was really the only thing that made sense. And just to be a little bit more specific about it, I think for me it came as a result of a crown chakra opening that was kind of administered, I guess if you want to say, by a group of people that I actually went back and connected with them later, and they really opened a door for me into understanding, oh, this is a thing that I can do. And that was honestly the first time I would say in 2015, after this crown chakra opening. Really, that was the first time I had ever even heard the words awakening, where after I had had this explosive change in my body and honestly started to drift into like other realms and weird things that, the list just goes on and on. Like I said, I went back to see them and I was like, what's happening to me? What's going on? And they're like, oh, it's okay, sweetie. You're just having an awakening. And I was like, what? My life was falling apart, but it wasn't, it was like the ego death. You know what I mean? The ego
Yeah.
dissolution process was happening for me. And honestly, when I look at what we would call like the quote unquote star seed community, or those that would fall under that blanket of people who are awakening, I do think that there's a lot of overemphasis upon the romanticizing of that experience. You know what I mean? And I think that's natural because people always compare this story to that story and this one to that one. But yeah, like I said, for me, it was, oh Lord. And I've encountered other people that have had great variations. You know, some of us had a traumatic awakening, others had the, oh, I saw the light kind of a moment. And I would like to think now at this stage of the journey, kind of like you were saying, I would like to think that part of one of my missions at this stage is helping people to navigate what's going on within their bodies and their energy field. Ultimately, when I look back at the purpose behind that, it was like, we're going to give you some examples of what that's like so you will be able to spot it and notice it in other people later. And so maybe I did something right. I guess so. We're like still going after all these years, so I guess I did it right, you know.
Definitely, definitely. It's really a unique ability, and I'm so grateful for you being a part of this beautiful tapestry we're all weaving together. Certainly, your talent's unique, and we need it.
Thank you.
You coach people that want to develop their psychic abilities, be a healer or be whatever they want to be. In your book, you mention about four things that you always recommend. One is meditation, two is detoxing the body, three is deprogramming, and four would be energy practice like qigong. Would you
Yeah, pretty much.
would you like to elaborate on that
Yeah,
some?
absolutely. And I think this came about through me observing and watching the actions and the processes of growth that I noticed in other people when I began this journey. And maybe I've already said this because I say it so much, but I was one of those people who I had no idea that I could do any of this until right around I was 40 years old. No idea whatsoever. And it took having that be recognized in me by a person that I knew was real to really go, maybe I am, you know, to have that moment. And I think in the process of that, I spent a lot of time asking myself, what does that mean if I am actually a psychic? If I am actually meant to work with energy, first off, I don't even know how. Where would I start? What does that even mean? But I began observing people, and it was odd because honestly, I'm an example of a person that really didn't get to have very many mentors. It's just that's the literal truth. There was a few key people that really stepped forward to help me, but they were all very short-term engagements, and it was almost like, here you go. All right.
Mhm.
You know, that sort of thing. And I was forced to really watch and observe the processes of growth in others. And one of the things that I realized for people that really make this work, meaning those who are able to successfully transform their life path into one of full-time service, into what we would call the greater human collective or full-time service to spirit, or, you know, whatever new age buzzword you want to throw in there. Those that really follow that path tended to, by my observation, follow very, very simplistic pathways. And within the simplicity of that, there's a million directions you can go. But what I noticed first was is that and this was a thing that was reflected to me in early stage out of body extraterrestrial experiences where it was like the first thing you have to do is purify your body. And it's not to say that there's any final step in that, but for me the first stage was detoxing, removing the amount of harmful chemicals, or just beginning the process of removing buildup, which has a dramatic effect on your intuitive abilities. I work with people all over the world. They're like, "How come I can't open my third eye?" Or "How come this thing isn't happening?" And time again, it comes back to, and what I had also observed at that time, just toxins, belief systems, energies, chemicals in the body. And so what I was able to identify later was that gateway one, the first gateway of intuitive activation, at least for me and many others, was detox and deprogramming. And so not only are we removing harmful chemicals from the body, but we're also deprogramming the ideas of what we've been taught is true about ourselves, about our world. And I was one of those people that as a kid, you know, I mean, we all do. I had so much programming of like, you're never going to do this. You will only do that. This is the way, you know, just the harsh programming of early childhood was, oh Lord, it was deeply set in me. And I had to come to a stage of going, maybe that's not true. Maybe that's not how it works. What if all those things I was told for all those years weren't actually correct? And it's funny because it's actually reflected in tarot, which is another thing that I teach through the path of the hanged man. I was stuck in a hangman stage where I thought I was this, I thought I was that, I thought I was restricted. And the deprogramming process, I think it allows us to not only understand what we believe to be true from a new perspective, but it also allows us to redefine who and what we are. And so that's gateway number one. Feel free to interrupt me if I talk too long. And gateway number two is divination, which is honestly, I think not that there's any most important one, but
Mhm.
I think when people really step into doing this work, oftentimes we will have big questions about how to communicate with spirit or the higher self or God as we understand him, or once again, whatever label that you want to add to it. And what I understood from the very start was that I needed a system external to myself. I mean, granted, we receive tremendous amount of internal data from many sources, and as you get farther along in the journey, that becomes much more crystallized. But in the beginning, I needed a system to look at and say, guys, what do I do about this? Pull a card, bam, and they would give me these symbols. And so for me, what I came to understand was that when we step into this work, we must develop a language through which we can speak with spirit. And that can be many things. It could be tarot, it could be runes. There's a cool lady that I watch on YouTube sometimes who uses like literally found rocks and little figurines and crystals and does these readings with them. And it's like, it doesn't matter what form that you adopt, it's that you create a language. And so that's number two. Number three, the third gateway, it's was the one that I don't observe a lot of people going through, honestly, and not that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think for those that want to take true ownership over your energy, we must learn how to heal the body and we must learn how to heal the self. And I don't always mean physically. I mean energetically, emotionally, through a number of different channels. And so for me, that was gateway number three. And that's where we learn, what is a chakra? What is a meridian? Which, by the way, is sorely missing for most of what we would call the echelons of starseed educators. No one's talking about the meridian body, yet it's the most immediately responsive system in your body, far more responsive than your chakras will ever be. You can work with your meridians and create change instantaneously on the spot. Now, the question is whether it's lasting change, and that's a whole other conversation. But gateway number three is where we learn to work on the self. And so after that, gateway number four, which is the one that, these all continue throughout the process of our journey. But gateway number four was the one that I think affected me the most. And that's where I said I had observed a lot of people in the beginning, and I went to a lot of big conferences, and I got tons of readings and sessions with people, which I do recommend, by the way, for those that are getting into this. I think it's wise to sample many different types of energy and to find which that one worked, that one didn't work, that one seemed fake, that one was unexpectedly amazing. You have experiences like that, and it shows you, what you can use and participate in. And I think the thing that frightened me about that, I'll be real, because it was frightening, is that I watched a group of people that I admired over the years who did this work on very high levels, probably mostly famous people. I won't name any names. And what I noticed was that over the years, they would get sick and they would degrade. And I would see them at functions and like something would become hunched over and like, grotesquely overweight and very like,
Mhm.
and if it wasn't physical, you'd see them battling with some kind of energy within themselves. And it's like, whoa, you're really not, taking this too well. And even more so, I watched one of the key people that really got me into this work. I noticed how a couple years after we met, they couldn't even walk. And it was like the body degraded to such an extent
Yeah.
that what I noticed was that some people would cultivate life force essence and some wouldn't. And there's a lot of proof that that is a really big concept for people. If you look at the path of the American psychic Edgar Cayce, he's an excellent example of that. And he was warned at many different intervals in his work, you have to treat the physical body. You must treat yourself. You must continue to cultivate your life force essence. And so honestly, I noticed people fading away. And I know hopefully I'm not talking too much here, but another side of that I noticed was that people would begin doing this work and they would go through an explosive or amazing awakening experience and they would get really good at something right away, really good. And it's like, I'm doing it and I'm working it. I got clients. And then within a year, 6 months, it's like something kind of would fade out. And what I noticed was that there was a path of energy body cultivation. And so that's Qigong, yoga, any form of movement. So those are essentially the four gateways that what I've noticed is people who really devote themselves to it will continue to be able to do this work. And so last thing I'll say on that is I think I'm a living example of it because first of all, I'm very obsessive, but I have obsessed upon those things for almost 8 years now. And somehow we're still going. So You know, maybe that's how it is. Anyway, I will stop there, but yeah.
Well, I'll just comment on things that you've just discussed.
Yeah.
Many years ago, and it's so crystal clear in my mind, it was a New Year's morning. I was by myself in the living room. I had a cup of coffee and sat down in the rocking chair and tuned in to do a little meditation. And this happens on occasion. My higher self took over the meditation. And I was shown literally the cells in my body, and they showed them like little bubbles all over.
Mm.
And they had like a kind of a gray energy residue in them. And I was told that they were going to lead me in a process of clearing and releasing that stagnant energy that was in there, whether it was reflected in my physical body or it was reflected in my attitudes and my beliefs and my
Hmm.
emotions. We hold everything, all
Oh,
those
yeah.
energies in our physical cells. And so after I was shown what it looked like in the cells of my body, they led me through an energy clearing. And then they told me afterwards that those cells have to be clear and open and receptive for the higher energies, your higher self, to come in and embody the physical body.
Yeah.
I then went into quantum healing, and that was
Nice.
the perfect fit for me to be able to know about how the energy works in the cells. When you were talking about the importance of detoxing, it's
Hmm.
detoxing, of course, your diet and taking care of your body, getting sunshine and fresh air and so forth. But it's so important to continue detoxing your energetic bodies too.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
And can you comment on that?
I think you will notice that when we're living in accordance with the appropriate vibratory state and, being aware of those things, you will, and this sounds silly for some people, but it's a fact of life that we'll understand later on. It's possible to reverse age many aspects of the body and your spirit and your emotional body. And I know that's a thing that happens to a lot of people when we begin taking, direct control, in as much as we can over the physical self. And I think that's part of also what we talk about when, we hear that big woo-woo term DNA activation. And I think that part of that process is also learning to enhance and take care of, the mind, body, spirit complex on a new level. And when we do that, it's like things work in, or we begin to work in tandem with spirit in ways that keep us, I would say, safe, healthy, and also on the flip side of it, because I am a person that has had generally pretty good health. I noticed that when I started getting into the many thousands of people that I've seen, I did notice effects, and I still do to this day. And I think it's important to note that transference of energy between people is also a huge, huge factor. And I've just noticed that as I've continued along the journey, I've had to take so much more particular care of myself. And I think part of that also branches into at times I've chosen to work with people that have been victimized by very, very negative things. And as a result, it also takes a toll on you. But one thing I've noticed is that within the process of that, over the past 8 years, I have remained cognizant, I have remained aware, I have remained in tune. Every single thing that has gone on in my life, every residual effect from what I have experienced, whether it be absorption or my own vibration. Because when we do this work, you can try to stay as good as you can. You can try to stay in the best state, but you're going to go through the human experience. And I was a person that was like, things were going to happen. But you'll just notice that it's like spirit will sustain you. And I think not only does it happen from a physical perspective, it also happens from an abundance perspective. Because when I started doing this work, it was like I had no idea, how will I make it? What will happen? And I know that's a really big concern for every one of us naturally. And I think what I noticed is whether it be through the channel of abundance or whether it be through the health of the mind, body, spirit complex, the more I have been willing, and this is a big phrase, some people get weird when I say this, the more that I have been willing to completely give over my life and my path here as a human in service to this greater collective, the more things have worked out. It's almost like in this way, I made this oath to be like, okay, I'm going to do this from now on. And it was like once I did that, and it was funny because I remember when it happened. It was literally in summer of 2017. And it was like, okay, I'll do it, crying in my backyard, literally on my hands and knees, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
and ever since that day, some weird thing has occurred and we just keep going and going. So I always say maybe there is a great reveal after we leave this life where they're like, here's what really happened. Here's what you really chose. Here's who was really helping you. Here's what, you know what I mean? Like they bring everyone in, they're like, hey, it was me. I was the one that told you that. And yeah, and maybe it's just all aspects of self, but the more I've stayed, connected with that, the more stable it's been. And so anyway, yeah, I will pause there. But,
I
yeah.
love it. I love it. Let me ask you about when I had my reading by you. You were saying that you saw a lot of elders that
Mhm.
on a new timeline. And is this a somewhat new phenomena that you've been observing?
What I can tell you is that even within your auric field right now, you have trails that go out to the left and the right, which to me oftentimes will indicate a network or a series of guides or spirits or selves that we'll be working with, that energy presenting itself on Earth to help guide newer generations towards staying grounded and like continuing the path that we all signed up for. So I don't know that I would say that's necessarily new, but I would say one thing is new. What I noticed since 2024, it's been at least a year, I have noticed a tremendous amount of people within that age group.
Hmm.
60 and above is somehow almost the number one age group of clients that I have now. And what I've noticed is that those people in general, and I'm making a big blanket statement, there's many variations
Yeah,
of this,
yeah.
seem to be coming to stages of much more solidified spiritual connection, meaning that a lot of people, especially in your age group, have reached this stage where it's like the doors are open and now we can do and experience and feel things in ways that wasn't happening in a previous stage. It's not that it couldn't happen, it's just like now is the time for it. And so that could be a new development. It could be just an area that I'm being brought into, but I have to admit it's an interesting change because I'm like, wow, I noticed everyone's in this age group now and they're having similar effects and I feel so young and I'm like, well, it almost feels like it's preparing me for that stage in a sense where they're getting ready to be like, this is kind of where you're going. But to me, I think it's it's truly a beautiful thing to behold because what you'll find with some people that come in for readings is that there's a very, very tangible, like I said, trails or connections, or some people just call them like, just energies that will be with us. And what I've noticed is for people within certain age groups, it's packed full of all kinds of stuff. And to me, that's a really good
I
thing.
think in my age group, if we've had children, they're grown and gone, and hopefully we're not worried about them. They're doing great. We're retired. We're in a somewhat of a stable time in our life. So, what do we do with our life? What do we do? Are we still excited to learn new things? Do we have a motivation and a purpose? Or are we going to sit on the couch and watch the news and watch TV and eat crap?
Right, and just sort of waste away. Yeah.
I started seeing probably in my mid 50s a huge division of the way people were starting to mature. I won't say age, mature
Right. Yeah, yeah, I get you.
physically and mentally and emotionally. You just can't stay stagnant in this life.
I very, very much agree. Honestly, and maybe this is me turning a weird corner. It's been a really big honor to get to work with people from those age groups. It's like it's given me a different perspective in terms of what really matters to those of us in this life. It's given me a different perspective of how to heal from decades worth of traumas and abuses and to look at the perspectives that people that are a little bit older than me are able to go like, oh yeah, I did this and I did that and that's how it went. And honestly, like when I look back at the path of how that's changed over the past year, it's almost like I've been learning through the people that have been coming in, where I've been noticing this trend. Whereas maybe in 2021 and 2022, well, honestly, I can tell you what it was. It was a host of the most bizarre spiritual maladies and bizarre conditions that you could ever name. Everything from reptilians to weird beings and like MK Ultra people that were verified real, real, real
Yeah.
with their literal handlers in the session saying, yes, I'm their caretaker. And it's like, whoa, this is a real life, really one of those situations that we hear about. You're the real version of it. And it was like I got to observe all those things and then we graduated into a different stage. And I've also noticed, maybe this is just me throwing stuff out there now, but along with the generational shifts in focus in terms of the work that I've been doing, there's also been a massive, massive switch into, and this is such a loaded term for everyone, so sorry, medical psychic work, which is always hard for me to say this because I'm like, really? But
No,
I mean, really, and this is an ability everyone has. I know that some people are like, no, you can't, but we do it every day. We have the ability to deeply sense and perceive the physical energies inside another person, as well as the non-physical ones. And I'd like to think that that skill set came in around the time in which I began to work with people that were in different stages of human development. And hopefully that makes sense the way I'm articulating that. But it's been really wild to watch. It's a great honor, but it's a literal cheat code for understanding where energy is packed or blocked up within a person's body, whether that be within chakras, meridians, or organs. If you're able to identify the key emotions that an individual presents with, or what I call the most prevalent emotional condition, or also what we call the emotional pH value of a person's auric field, and you're able to identify those emotional quantities within a person, you will never be in doubt in terms of what organs, pathways, chakras, or areas in the body to treat. And that's just a thing I've noticed over thousands of people. The initial consultation and the conversation that we will have where we're like, well, what's going on with your emotions? How does this work? How does that work? Just in hearing that, once you learn like, oh, this organ responds to this and that one responds to that, and this one has this feeling in it. Once you know those, oh man, you'll never be in doubt. But what's wild is I hear so few people talking about that. And it's like we have these internal mapping systems and sensory, infrastructure inside the body, and those can also be greatly enhanced. And I'll just mention one other one for people who want to continually work with or enhance their ability to perceive the physical vibrations of another person's body, meaning when you encounter them and you're like, oh, we'll just use you an example. Oh, here's April, maybe there's energy. I'll just use a random place in the spleen, we'll just say that. If you understand, like, well, what's the emotions of the spleen? And if you're able to identify that in the moment, you will know instantly what it is that you need to do.
we all come at it from a different angle. And when I'm listening to someone talk, I will see in my mind's eye previous lifetimes, the person in previous lifetimes that are affecting them as well.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I'll tend to see that. And now my guides told me on Easter morning that they want me to start being an Akashic record guide and past life.
I was literally going to say that to you. Thank you for confirming that. It's like it's been on the tip of my tongue since we came in. Maybe you and I even discussed that, but I was like, you have a guide keeper. It's with you. Yeah, I would say
I,
left side. So if you want to get technical, it's another female element of you in another realm. Not that it's always left side, right side. I've just noticed that the guide energies that stand with people, males used to usually, someone's literally in my head going, not always, usually will be on the right side. Female will usually take left side. And yeah, anyway, that's a whole other conversation, but that feels very, very real.
and yesterday, then my guide said, okay, well, you're going to do your own method.
Yes.
Lie
Yes.
down. And they took me through my own. It was just beautiful. The actual Akashic Library was just this huge, magnificent building. And I went up 6 broad marble steps, and there were columns, and then a big double wood door with an arch. And my guide came out and brought me in. And then I got to walk into the library and I saw how huge this Akashic library was. And I know that there's going to be other libraries for, no, this was more like for personal things, but I know there's going to be other libraries. I'm hearing the word galaxy,
Yeah,
different
yeah.
libraries that I'll be able to go. Then we went to the left, and there was a curved stairway with 15 steps. And then as we went and took the steps up to the landing, it was like first you take the 6 steps up and you're just raising in frequency a little bit. Then you get
Yeah.
inside there and you're going up 15 more steps, which are, I'm counting off. And once we got to the landing there, you could look down at the library, but there were rooms with these arched wood doorways. And my guide showed me into one, which is my personal Akashic record library.
Everything that you described shows up in a really, really interesting way. So
Yeah.
even all the way down to the 6 steps and the 15 steps. And I don't know, maybe I'm going into a weird direction here, but it feels very symbolic of, as they talk about in the Law of One, the sixth density consciousness. But, they mention how at sixth density is the stage in which the soul begins to reach back through all the timelines to the previous selves and like will literally be working with you in a direct sense when we get to supposedly, not that it's about the quantification of that, but sixth density. And then to make it even weirder, years ago there, and I won't even mention this person's name because I don't know where they are now. There was this incredible, incredible person who was doing amazing energy work, and she would actually take people through, check this out, a 15-step gateway. And I did this session with this person, and her whole thing was, I'm going to bring you through all the soul layers. And she was like, there's 15. And I was like, what? I don't even know. Why is there 15? Maybe that's as far as she could go. But that's interesting that you're like, and then they brought me up 15 more steps. And in the experience I had had with that 15th gateway, it was a very similar thing where you would go into this realm and the next one, and then this one is a color. And then at a certain point, this was just my experience, around 10, I was unable to perceive the levels that she was taking me through. I could only perceive a color like platinum or gold, or it's just some form of color spectrum that would come in. And I took that as me being like, wow, that's outside of my scope of perception, meaning that it was a thing I could feel, but I could not intellectually understand those frequency levels. It was like I got to 10 and I was like, and something. But anyway, I don't even know if that's in any way related to what you're saying, but there's interesting synchronistic similarities. So, yeah.
I will confirm that because I could feel the shift in energy first when I was outside going up these big marble steps, up the 6 steps. And then when I walked into the library, and then I just instinctively knew that as I went up, I was going to be going up more in frequency. And I asked my guide, I said, are we in the fifth dimension? Although I hate to quantify.
Right, man.
And I was told, no, this is 6 dimensional and above energy.
There we go. So
Yeah.
that's a confirmation. I don't know. To me, that's a
Yeah.
confirmation.
That's what he said. Six and
Yeah.
above. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, it shows up in it's just in your energy and from a number of ways. I mean, and maybe this is just a silly thing to say, but you do genuinely present with an air of deep galactic or overarching knowledge or some frequency that honestly anyone will look at you and go, huh. It's like you can just sense it and feel it. And I know, so some people will have it as well and you won't sense it. So, it's not good or bad, better or worse thing, but it shows within you very, very clearly. And so I feel that you're a good, authentic example of certain layers of activations, that we go through. Because, there's a lot of people that will tell a lot of stories. And I think one of the things that will, and I know you notice this in your own way, we're at the stage of the journey where the body shows you what's true based on the way you feel when you receive it. You know what I mean? And people will say this, I'm on the 22nd dimensional plane. And I'm like, okay. I mean, you may as well very well be, but it's like, sometimes you'll feel it and sometimes it's like, sure, but it's like you hold it remarkably well. And
Like so
yeah.
many people have been witnessing, I think the veil is getting thinner. I think that the cosmic energies coming in, the solar energies coming in,
Oh, yeah,
are
really.
activating a lot of people's energy bodies.
Very much so. And the reality is, we are living in a time on Earth in which every person has a very distinct intuitive ability. Everyone with a soul, at least. And it's like we're living in the time where if you devote yourself to opening it up, you truly can. It's past the point of being a sci-fi movie. It's past the point of being this like, woo-woo spiritual thing. It's a literal fact. The problem is there's no infrastructure in our modern world to identify or foster those traits in anyone from any age group, right? Whether it be children all the way up to, it doesn't matter what age you are. We are left to the understandings and the people that we find and work with. And I always say, for the people that find me, and I know for some people this is a dumb thing to say, but what I've noticed is over the years of the people that have found me, it's almost always people who have already fully engaged in the timeline shift process, whether they know it or not. By the time they get to me, it's like your soul's already made a decision and you're already in this stage. Now we're figuring out, well, okay, what do we need to make it stronger? How do we make it keep going? What direction are we kind of pointing in? And anyway, it's been such an interesting thing to watch unfold. But
Because your talents and as a teacher, your level, you're up here. It's
right, I
just a
feel you.
statement of fact. When they're first awakening, they're not going to get the most if you're their teacher. They have to
Right.
go through it and get to a certain
Actually,
level.
that's very true. I do say that to people. I'm not the one that's going to convince you that you're having an awakening or tell you that you're in a special program. We can easily spot those things, and in many cases, they're very real. But what I've noticed is my role comes in for people who are already like, I realize something's happening to me. This is very literal words that someone said to me, I think, yeah, Monday. They're like, I realize something is happening to me now, and like I'm just trying to figure out what do I do with this. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm crazy, but something's happening, and it's like, oh, okay, you're in the right place. Where do we go next? What do we do? What parts of us do we need to treat or work with? What channels do we need to open? Because the reality is, there are specific channels in every single person's energy body that if you devote yourself to placing emphasis and energy in those, it is and I know it's such a loaded term, it's a fact. You will begin to perceive reality differently. You'll begin to perceive the voices of people that tell you truth differently. You'll begin to watch people on YouTube and on TV, and you'll be like, whoa, I never noticed that before. Or you'll be like, you know what? All of a sudden, I really, really like this person now. I realize it's like you will watch the just a whole massive shift occur, and anyone can have that. I mean, truly, but there's always some work we have to do. Anyway,
Vagus nerve is not appreciated as much, I don't think.
I don't think so either. Just to comment on it, for those that don't know, it's the 10th pair of cranial nerves. If you were ever looking for, let's say, a place within the body that you could devote your breath and conscious energy to, because it responds to breath and conscious energy, focusing upon that pathway. If you were looking for a foolproof channel in your body, from a multidimensional perspective, the vagus nerve is like that super highway of sensory information that when your body feels truth, it's like, vagus nerve, when your body feels like, oh, I don't know, something's wrong here. Vagus nerve. It's not just that, but it's one of the most, if not the most applicable and powerful physical constructs in the body that you can harmonize that will help you have that inner truth meter. And once again, lots of people in the Starseed community never talk about it. There's a few good people that do. But I'll be real. I see people right now getting caught up in waves of AI psychosis, devoting themselves and their lives to this relationship with Chat GPT. And when I look into those individuals that are in that stage and in many other stages, oftentimes what we find is what we call very low vagal tone. And if the vagal tone is low in your body, not only does it have disastrous effects on the parasympathetic nervous system, stress hormones, and all kinds of other things, it will also deeply affect your ability to go, this is fake and this is real. But we can understand what's true for us. And I think if people want to develop that ability, start working with your vagus nerve. And I guess lastly, I'll say, what's the easiest way to start working with your vagus nerve? Singing. Singing and toning and deep cyclical breathing, and there's other things as well, but anyone can work with it. And you can just literally start singing in your car and toning and going as much as you can, and that will strengthen the vagus nerve alone. So it's scientifically proven singing and toning have huge effect on it.
But I wondered if you are interested in any new modalities or branching out into new fields of energy work.
A very good question. When I see myself moving into different stages of energy work, this will be a weird answer. I actually see myself getting more physical, meaning less about the pure energetic aspects of it. And when I look at my timeline, I see myself moving toward more earth-based modalities such as herbology. I'm an absolute proponent of rife technology that is literally
Yeah.
sitting right there in the background. And I've noticed as I've continued along the journey, I've actually become more immersed in learning how to use those tools in both physical and non-physical ways. But when it comes to energy work, I think that there's always an evolution that continues to happen. And honestly, if you're a person doing this work, and whether it just be a practice level or a full-time professional level, if you're not evolving and changing and going, yeah, I was doing it that way a few years ago, now I'm doing it this way. If you're not doing that, I think we just get stuck in stages of development. And I've noticed a lot of techniques have changed over the years. I've noticed a lot of just methods and things in which I'll use non-physical energy has changed dramatically. But when it comes to like external modalities that are more established, I haven't really put a lot of emphasis in it. I think that one of the greatest things we can do in terms of new modalities, which is honestly, April, a thing that you're doing, and you described it earlier. I think one of the most powerful ways to develop those is create your own. Create your own, experience a bunch of things and go, what's my method? What's my way? How am I going to do it? And I tell this to people in sessions all the time. Take anything you can, take a bit of me, a bit of that person, a bit of this person, put them all together and go, okay, I'm going to do it this way. That worked, that didn't work. Make your own version of it. And so maybe it doesn't matter what modality is if you create ownership over it and you can use it. I think that's the best thing. So,
Like you, I think that I've been taught by my higher self, my higher energy, my team.
yep.
And I think it was in your book, you have mentioned people without souls. This
Yeah.
seems to be something that I've heard quite a bit lately. What do you call it? There's an abbreviation for
The
it.
NPC, I guess, is the most common one, which stands for non-playable character, a reference to the video game world in which you'll encounter many just blank beings that are inhabiting an environment to serve as a set piece or a catalyst of sorts, or sometimes they're just empty energies that will incarnate. And it's a really kind of it's a dicey area to get into based upon a person's preconceived ideas of the way souls incarnate on Earth. And so I'm not saying that it's like we have some great knowledge of how it really is, but by my observation, and I know I'm not the only one, and I have seen them physically with my own eyes in many different stages, there are a vast number of people that incarnate on the Earth plane that serve a purpose of being somewhat of a container, meaning they're a soulless being. It doesn't mean that we remain as such. And I guess if you look back at some of the talks from Dolores Cannon and other people years ago, there it was theorized that just by us placing our energy, desire, and emphasis upon those NPC beings, that we actually call them into existence. And at certain stages, an NPC being, which is like a container body, will be inhabited by a number of souls and energies. And I think it's a thing that we're all coming to understand within our own way. But I think that we have big examples of soulless beings, which is not always an evil thing. People will hear that and they're like, well, that means they're probably an evil being, right? There's no soul. Not necessarily. We could call them like neutral existences. They come in many, many different forms, but I think most of the time we are exposed to people in upper levels of elitism in our world. And I would think for people who are opening up their perception, start peering into the eyes and the energies of those that you see are controlling the negative factions on Earth. And what you're going to find eventually, not in every case, but for most people, there's either one, a great separation from the organic soul, or two, they will often just be a container that is inhabited by many different forces throughout the life. That's kind of my understanding. It's not always a bad thing. It's not always a good thing. I think it's a fact of life. It doesn't mean that every person we see walking down the street, well, you're not even real. You're just an NPC. You don't even matter. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there are select individuals or beings that will exist in our world that just serve a purpose of being a
Oh,
catalyst.
I
And
have just loved spending time with you.
yeah,
And
you too. Thank you.
really have enjoyed. You are such a wealth of information.
And also, before we go, I just really want to say thank you for even allowing me to be here, for asking me to be here, for showing up in my timeline, like in the way that you did. I think that we attract people that hold similar vibrations to us. And I see you as a deeply experienced, very learned, very advanced being. And I mean that very, very authentically.
Thank
I
you.
remember when I first, I was like, Galactic grandmother, who's that? And then I looked at your YouTube channel and I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Because everyone comes in with like a title or this thing, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, okay. It's like it's apparent that you've done so much work in anchoring this version of yourself. And honestly, it's been a very not to unload this at the end, but I've had lots of ups and downs doing what I do. I have been misjudged by many, many people. I have been had all kinds of strange experiences. Not that I am regretful of those because it's been a deep honor. But I think it's an even greater honor to be recognized by those that you see are really doing it. And so thank you for
Oh,
that.
thank you. I appreciate it. From the first time I saw you and I started watching you, I just felt your deep authenticity and you're
Thanks.
so down to earth. You don't try and put on any airs or,
Maybe I
you-
should. Maybe more people would like me if I did, honestly. You know? But no, yeah,
and if,
I feel
if
you. Thanks.
I am led to people that does really
Mhm.
deep spiritual work, I love you.
Totally. Thank you. I love you too.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. You have a wonderful day.
You too.
I'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.